Shalom, peace, and blessings. Welcome to the Fourth Angels Learning Center, and I'm Jadiel. And today we're going to be addressing the statement in Galatians chapter 4 that says the Messiah was made, or what many translations say, born under the law. We're going to see if we can break this understanding down. I think that this statement or phrase has a huge misunderstanding. I think many people assume what it means rather than comparing what Paul was saying in other areas. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull up this verse. We're going to look at what it says, and then we're going to try to see what it means. Okay. And I think this is what the confusion comes in. So the statement comes from Galatians chapter 4, verse 5. We're going to read verse 5, verse 4, and then we're going to read it more in line of the context. So it says here, but when the fullness of time was come, Elohim sent his son, made of a woman or born of a woman, many translations say. And then it says this, born under the law or made under the law. Now, many people say that this means to be born or made under the law means to be under the authority of the law. And what I want to show today is that that's not what it means. The phrase made under the law means that you're under the condemnation of what the law requires. It's saying that the law is showing that you are guilty of breaking the law. Now, why is this so important? Because it says here in verse 5, to redeem them that are under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. We need to be redeemed from the condemnation of the law. The law reveals that you have sinned, right? We're going to look at what scripture says about this phrase under the law, and then we're going to come back to Galatians chapter 4. So let's go to Romans. We're going to go to Romans chapter 3. Listen to what it says pertaining to this phrase under the law. We're going to start from verse 19 and 20. It says, now we know that whatever things the law says, it says to them who are under the law, right? Now it has a colon there. It's about to explain or continue in expressing the understanding of this statement. So the law says to those who are under the law, and then it says that every mouth may be stopped and that all the world may become guilty before Elohim. So what does the law do? The law reveals your state, your stance, your state of righteousness, your state in relationship with the Most High. This is what it says here. Let's read it again. We know that whatever things the law says, it says to them that are under the law, so that all the world can become guilty. And then in verse 20, it says, therefore, by the deeds of the law or the acts of the law, no flesh shall be justified or made right in his sight. Because by the law is the knowledge of sin. The law is just knowledge. The law just reveals knowledge. It reveals understanding. That's all it does. It does not give you righteousness, nor does it make you righteous in his sight, as it says here. The works or actions of the law, nobody can become right before in his sight because they did some laws. Okay? So it's very clear, showing that this phrase under the law is an indicator that you are guilty before Elohim. Let's look at this. Let's go back to this statement now. So Galatians chapter 4 says that Messiah was made under the law. What does it mean? Made under the law to redeem them that are under the law. So was Messiah made under the condemnation of the law to redeem them that were under the condemnation of the law? Absolutely. The chapter right before gives you the definition of what Messiah did. So if we go to Galatians chapter 3, looking at verse 11 to 14, listen to what it says. No man is justified or made right by the law in the sight of Elohim. This is the same thing it says in Romans chapter 3. It says here, it is evident because the just or the righteous will live by faith. The law is not of faith, but the man that does the law shall live in them, meaning they shall promote or do the law by faith. So if you notice, it says the just shall live by faith. The man that does the law shall live in them. And look at what it says in verse 13. The Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law. Does it say that the Messiah redeemed us from the law? No. It says that he redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. So the next chapter says that he redeemed us from being under the law because he was made under the law. This is the same statements, the same understanding. Now we're going to go back and we're going to look at the word made just so that way we could get more clarity and there's no assumptions. So it says here, Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law. Now, when you are cursed, what occurs? Why are people cursed by the law? Because in verse 10 of Galatians, it explains, for as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse, because it is written, cursed is everyone that does not continue in all the things that are written in the book of the law to do them. You understand? No man can be made right by the law in his sight. So what does this mean? It's not saying by keeping the commandments you're under the curse, but by not continuing in them, you are under the curse. If you go to the book of Deuteronomy, it shows you that there's a curse for transgressing Yah's commandments. When you go against what Yah says, then there's a curse and a consequence that happens for those actions. So if you are cursed because you disobeyed, you cannot just start obeying now. You have to be made right first with the person. It's just like if you are in a marriage relationship, if you commit adultery against your spouse, you can't just the next day just say, you know what, I'm just not going to commit adultery no more, and I should be accepted. That's not the case. You have to reconcile or atone first with your spouse. You have to allow you and your spouse to reconcile. You have to be forgiven of your transgression against your spouse. You don't just say, well, tomorrow I'm going to start not committing adultery. And because I did that the next day, I should be justified for what I did the day before. No, this is not how it works. So likewise, if anyone thinks that they are justified by the law, they are under the curse. Why? Because everyone has not done the law perfectly. Everyone has not kept his commandments perfectly. So what do we need? We need to be made right in Yah's eyes. And this is why the Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law by being made a curse or taking the curse upon himself for us. When he did this, it made us right before him. Now, in being made right, when we're told or asked by the Father to do certain things, we do it freely because he made us right first before him. Not only did he make us right, but by faith, he gave us a gift, his spirit, to enable us to perform the things that he wants us to perform. When you forgive your spouse of committing adultery, you now have requirements, right? If your spouse comes to you and you forgive them for what they have done, your next requirement, whether it's said or unsaid, is don't do that again. If you have extended forgiveness to your spouse or even our children for doing wrong things, lying to us or stealing, when we extend forgiveness, it doesn't have to be said to not do that again. You understand? But there's many times where it does need to be said to remind the person, This is what I'm forgiving you for. You need not to do this again. Okay, so when we're talking about the curse of the law only exists for people who are habitually desiring to go against Yah purposefully. Now, what person who is forgiven is redeemed from the curse of the law because Messiah became the curse for you. So it says that the blessing of Abraham might come on the nations through the Messiah, that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. So let's go to Galatians chapter 4 now to look exactly at what made under the law is referring to. If we go to Galatians chapter 4, looking at verse 4 and 5, it says very clearly, when the fullness of time has come, Elohim sent his son made of a woman, made under the law, specifically to redeem them that are under the law. Now, was he made or born under the authority or the requirements of the law to redeem us from the requirements of the law? What's the requirements of the law? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Don't steal, right? Don't kill. Did he redeem us from the requirements of that law? No, but he did redeem us from the curse of the law, as we saw in Galatians 3. He did not redeem us from this. The law is just the knowledge of sin. So because he justified us or made us right, and the law is no longer condemning us, we are now received in the adoption of his children, right? So he is now accepting us and receiving us into himself. But let's look at this phrase. Many people will go to the Greek and we look at this word G1096. And in the Greek is the word genome. Let's pull it up. All right, the Greek word is genome. And it means to cause to be, right? It means to become or come to be. It's used many times for the understanding that you are brought forth or born. But one idea that's not just right away seen is that it also means to ordain to be or declare to be. Let's see if it's used that way. Let's look at a few verses in the concordance pertaining to the use of the phrase made, right? So many times they change this phrase to say born under the law. And I would say this is not a good translation because it doesn't redeem them that were born under the law. It redeems us who were under the curse of the law or born or breaking the law. So let's go to the concordance just to look at a few more statements. Let me pull up this word. So the word genome definitely in the context could be used for born. But when it's used for the word made, ordained is a much more accurate understanding pertaining to this particular verse, because it's saying that he was ordained or he was declared to be guilty of breaking the law to redeem us who was guilty of breaking the law. So let's see if this word ordained makes sense in some other verses. So Matthew chapter 4, verse 3, it says, when the tempter came to him, he said, if you be the son of Elohim, command these stones to be made bread or turned into bread, right? It's not saying that it was born. It's not talking about being birthed, but it's talking about changing it from stone to bread. This is what's happening to the Messiah. He is going from a perfect sacrifice, innocent, to being declared guilty. So this is what's happening with Messiah. So the stone is not born into bread, even though that's the same word, genome. Matthew 9:16, it says, no man puts a piece of a new cloth unto old garment, for that which is put in to fill it up takes from the garment, and the rip is made worse, or it becomes worse. So it goes from not being a bad rip to a worse rip. This is the same thing that happened with Messiah. There's other words that also mean made as well, but I want to make sure we use the word genome so that way it's not exclusively used for being born. Okay? So when it says here, there's so many There's so many. Let me just randomly choose one. Let's go to Romans 1:3. It says, concerning his son, Yahushua Messiah, our master, which was made of the seed of David according to the flesh. This particular context would be referring to being born of the lineage of David. Romans chapter 2, verse 25, for circumcision verily profiteth if you keep the law. But if you are a breaker of the law, your circumcision is made uncircumcision. Circumcision is counted or ordained or declared to be uncircumcision. So you can't physically undo a circumcision. Okay, so for a circumcision to be made uncircumcision, you would have to be declared uncircumcised because of your actions. Your uncircumcised heart will be what refers to or what causes you to be declared uncircumcised. Not your circumcised flesh, but your uncircumcised heart would determine you to be made an uncircumcised person. Now, there's another verse that uses this term made. Now, it's not in the Greek, the word is different from gnome, but the understanding still gives you the same, it still gives you the same understanding. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, looking at verse 20 and 21, it says, now then, we are the ambassadors of Messiah, as though Elohim did beseech you or plead with you by us. We beg you in Messiah's stead or in Messiah's place, be reconciled to Elohim, because he have made him to be sin for us. He made him to be sin. He ordained him to be declared sinful or a sinner, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of Elohim in him. So we need to be made the righteousness because he was made a sinner. So he did not sin, but he was declared a sinner. And we were not righteous, but we were declared righteous. He's cleansed us, placed us in a place where we can be declared righteous, given us the gift of the Spirit so we can walk in righteousness from that point on. So the idea of being made under the law is not saying that he was born under the culture or the authority of the law, but that he was born guilty, or he was made or declared guilty of breaking the law. This is what the phrase means, so that he can redeem those who were guilty of breaking the law as well. Galatians chapter 3, verse 13 and 14, he was made a curse. He redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. And 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 20 and 21, he was made sin who knew no sin, so we could be made the righteousness of Elohim in him. So I hope that this was clear. Being made under the law does not mean being born under the authority and guidance of the law. And I hope that this was clear, and I look forward to the next study. Shalom.